Don't listen to this for motivation. That was never the point. People hear Mamba Mentality and think it's confidence, energy, fire. They think it feels good. It didn't. What it really felt like was silence. Early mornings when nobody was watching. Late nights when applause didn't reach. Everyone saw the games, the banners, the moments. Very few saw what it cost to show up when it would have been easier not to. I wasn't driven by joy. I was driven by something heavier. A refusal to let myself off the hook. Discipline doesn't feel heroic when you're alone with it. It feels cold. It feels repetitive. It feels unforgiving. There were days I didn't feel inspired. Days I didn't feel strong. Days I didn't feel like myself. But I showed up anyway. Not because it felt good, but because walking away would have felt worse. Mamba Mentality was never about feeling powerful. It was about not escaping discomfort. And most people don't talk about that part. They talk about the outcome, not the quiet pressure that never leaves you. If you're still listening, you already understand more than most. Discipline separates you long before success does. Not from strangers, from people who know you. Because discipline makes you predictable in ways that make others uncomfortable. You say no when they say, just this once. You stop explaining why you can't stay. Why you can't slow down. At first, they admire it. Then they tolerate it. Then they quietly resent it. Obsession is a lonely thing. Not because no one is around, but because no one is walking at the same pace. While others rest, you repeat. While others celebrate, you review mistakes. While others move on, you stay with what went wrong. And the hardest part isn't the work. It's realizing that discipline makes you difficult to be around. You're not flexible. You're not relaxed. You're not easy. You're consistent. That consistency costs relationships. It costs comfort. It costs understanding. People assume you enjoy the sacrifice, that you chose it because it feels rewarding. But discipline doesn't reward you in the moment. It drains you. And still, you don't stop. Because once you've seen how far effort can take you, anything less feels like lying to yourself. That's when isolation begins. Not suddenly, gradually. One missed invitation at a time. There's a moment when you realize people aren't trying to understand you anymore. They're trying to label you. Labels are easier. They save time. They end conversations. They call you intense, difficult, cold. They don't see the restraint it takes not to quit. They don't see the doubt you carry into empty gyms. They only see the edges, never the weight. I learned that the more consistent you are, the less curious people become. They stop asking why. They start assuming. Every silence becomes arrogance. Every boundary becomes ego. Every standard becomes an attack. And explaining doesn't help. Explanation sounds like defense. Defense sounds like guilt. So you get quieter. Not because you don't care, but because clarity doesn't guarantee understanding. Being misunderstood publicly is one thing. Being misunderstood by people you trusted cuts deeper. That's when you stop expecting recognition for effort. You stop expecting fairness. You learn to carry things without witnesses. People think strength looks loud. They think it looks confident. Real strength looks like restraint. It looks like continuing without being seen. And over time, that invisibility becomes familiar. Not comfortable, just familiar. There were moments leaving would have made sense. Not dramatically, just quietly. When the body didn't respond the way it used to. When recovery took longer than the work. When pain stopped feeling temporary and started feeling normal. That's when discipline turns into endurance. You stop asking, how do I feel? You start asking, what's required? Staying isn't about courage. It's about refusal. Refusal to let pain decide who you become. Refusal to hand your standards over to circumstance. People think staying means you're fearless. It doesn't. It means you're familiar with fear and unwilling to let it negotiate for you. There were days I played hurt. Days I trained knowing tomorrow would cost more than today. Not because I loved suffering, because quitting would have cost something worse. My identity. Once you tie who you are to how you show up, walking away doesn't feel like rest. It feels like erasure. So you stay. Even when staying costs relationships. Even when staying costs comfort. Even when staying costs understanding. The applause fades faster than the consequences. Pain stays. And still, you show up. Not to prove anything to them, but because you already know what it feels like to betray yourself. And somewhere in the middle of all that, there's you. Not cheering. Not judging. Just listening. You didn't skip ahead. You didn't need highlights. You stayed with the quiet parts. That matters more than you think. Because most people only show up for outcomes. They disappear when the process gets heavy. When the story stops rewarding them. You didn't ask me to explain myself. You didn't ask for proof. You didn't ask for inspiration. You stayed. Presence is rare. Especially when there's nothing flashy to hold on to. And if you're still here, it's probably because you recognize this feeling. The weight of giving more than you receive. The exhaustion of holding yourself to standards no one else volunteered to carry. This isn't about me anymore. It never really was. It's about the quiet agreement between people who know what it costs to keep going. When no one is clapping, you don't need to understand every detail. To understand the weight, staying doesn't make you special. It makes you honest. And honesty, that's what keeps people like us moving. When motivation runs out, people think certainty is what keeps you going. It isn't. What keeps you going is tolerance for doubt. Doubt doesn't arrive loudly. It settles in. It asks quiet questions when no one else is around. Am I asking too much? Am I still chasing the right thing? Or am I just afraid to stop? Those questions don't come from weakness. They come from responsibility. When your choices affect more than just you, every decision carries weight. Every mistake echoes. You don't get to be careless with belief. You don't get to pretend confidence is endless. Some nights, discipline feels thin. Some nights, purpose feels borrowed. Some nights, you keep going out of habit, not conviction. And that scares people. They want certainty. They want clean answers. They want to believe the path is obvious. It isn't. The truth is, doubt never leaves. You just learn to carry it without letting it steer. There's no resolution here. No moment where everything clicks. Just a choice. Again and again. To continue without clarity. That's not weakness. That's reality. Hope doesn't sound the way people expect it to. It isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't promise outcomes. Hope is quieter than doubt. It shows up when someone stays, without asking you to be different, without asking you to explain the cost. I didn't find hope in winning. Wins are loud. They pass quickly. I found it in moments that didn't trend, a presence that didn't demand performance, someone willing to sit with discomfort without trying to fix it. That's rare, because most people don't want truth. They want resolution. They want the version of the story that makes them feel comfortable. Hope lives in the opposite place. It lives in patience, in listening, in choosing not to turn away when the story stops being rewarding. If you're still here, It's not because this feels good. It's because it feels familiar. Because you know that meaning usually costs something first. Hope doesn't remove the weight. It just reminds you that carrying it isn't pointless. And sometimes, that's enough. There isn't a clean ending to this. No final lesson. No moment where everything settles into place. People want closure because it makes pain feel organized. But real commitment doesn't end neatly. It just keeps asking the same question in different ways. Are you still here? Not because it's comfortable, not because it's rewarding, but because leaving would mean pretending that what you carried never mattered. Mamba mentality was never meant to feel good. It was meant to keep you honest when excuses start sounding reasonable. It was meant to teach you how to sit with discomfort without needing applause to justify it. Some days you feel grounded. Some days you feel tired in a way rest doesn't fix. Both are real. Neither cancels the other. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself, the quiet pressure, the invisible standards, the exhaustion that comes from caring too much, you don't need to harden yourself. You don't need to abandon belief. You just need to stay deliberate about what's worth carrying and what isn't. Together doesn't always mean side by side. Sometimes it just means not turning away. And right now, that's enough. No goodbye. No resolution. Just the understanding that staying, even quietly, is already a decision. And some decisions don't need to be explained.